$7.25, $7.25 an hour. That's the federal minimum wage. Could you live on that? Have you? What amount of pay is reasonable? And at what point is it so low that if you work for that, you're a victim?
People got bills, house payments, car insurance, all their utilities. And, their phone, the minimum wage doesn't cover it.
It often doesn't, and lately there have been lots of protests around the country, mostly restaurant workers complaining about low pay, and the protests have had an effect. California just passed a bill to raise that state's minimum wage to $10 an hour. Most people around me, I do live in Manhattan, say $10 isn't enough, and government must step in to guarantee those victims of greedy employers more money, a living wage. Yaron Brook says that's a ridiculous way to think about this. But Brook is president of the Ayn Rand Institute, and we know what a selfish person Ayn Rand was. So what's your deal? You just advocate selfishness?
Well, I'm advocating self-interest, that everybody should be self-interested. And in that sense, there are many people out there who are interested in working for these rates. And indeed, what happens when we set the minimum wage so high at $10 an hour, or whatever the rate happens to be, $7.25, is what happens to those people who don't produce at $10 an hour or don't produce at $7.25. What we create is a whole class of people who will never find a job. And who are those people? Young, inexperienced, teenage, inner-city youth who are now excluded completely from the workforce. They'll never learn the skills. They'll never get the experience necessary for making $100 an hour one day.
How are they excluded?
Well, because if they can only produce $5 an hour, nobody's going to employ them at $10 an hour. Nobody's going to lose on the employees that they hire.
And a restaurant lobbyist ran this ad, minimumwage.com, why robots could soon replace fast food workers demanding a higher minimum wage.
Well, we're actually seeing this. If you drive up the cost, what restaurants will do, they still need to make that profit. They still keep the price of their product cheap. They will replace people with technology.
McDonald's response to this, I thought, was interesting. They came out with a sample budget, a free comprehensive money management tool to provide an outline of what an individual budget may look like. And they showed that a person could work for minimum wage and still save $100 a month. However, it included working 2 jobs, and they took a lot of heat for that.
It's a little big brotherly for McDonald's to tell its employees, here's what you can do. But look, people are living all over this country making this kind of money. People are, when people came to this country 100 years ago, people lived on much less than this, and they sent their kids and they got an education and they rose up.
And people do around the world.
People do. Most people around the world live on much, much less. Government has no role in dictating
our
what
government
should be.
has decided it does have a role.
Well, it sure has. And as a consequence, you're seeing youth unemployment in this country close to 20%. Everywhere where government steps in to raise minimum wages, what you see is massive unemployment among those who can least afford it.
Think Progress says every facet of this budget basically is unachievable.
Many people achieve it. I mean, we all started somewhere. I make a lot of money today, but I started making probably less than a minimum wage. I was a foreign student, working in graduate school, making probably less than this. And with 2 kids, you manage. It's wrong to try to force people to pay a particular wage, to pay a particular form of income. This should be left for the marketplace, left to negotiations.
As I watch the protesters, there's a spring in their step.
Who got the power?
We got the power.
Who got the power?
We got the power.
We can't survive on 725.
They don't act like victims.
I don't see any one of those look like starving people. As we increase the minimum wage, as we make it more difficult for employers to hire, as we make it more expensive for employers to hire, what we're doing is not just violating their rights and reducing their profit and everything that has to do economically with that, but we're also denying jobs from people who can't afford to be denied those jobs. We create unemployment.
Listen to this more serious protester. He presents the victim message, and this persuades people.
Some people even work 80 hours a week, and they can't make ends meet, or they have no time for anything else. All they do is work all week.
All they do is work all week.
Nobody owes them anything. The idea that the whole idea
We're
of
a rich country. Don't we owe the poor or something?
No, we don't. The whole idea of
as an individual, I feel I owe people something.
Then you as an individual can voluntarily help them out. But what they're asking is not for your help as an individual. They're not trying to negotiate a better salary with their boss. What they're asking is for the state to bring its coercive power and force you to help them, force the employers to help them.
Thank you, Yaron Brook.